Welcome to the Homeschool Mom Chat. I hope you have your cup of tea. We're going to have a really lovely conversation with Homeschool Unrefined podcast host Angela Sizer. She's also the author of Thinking About Learning Differently. And I see, do I have all the bars on my cellular here? Very interesting. So today's conversation is about rethinking or getting a perspective shift on home education, on homeschooling. And in my experience in the last few weeks, I've had a rethinking or a perspective shift as well. I don't know if you can hear it, but there are a cacophony. There's at least a couple really big chainsaws outside cutting down a whole bunch of 200-foot coniferous trees because we're trying to maintain our Wi-Fi in this area and get it really nice and crisp and clear. And so for the past few weeks, these trees have been cut and felled, and today they're being bucked. So I don't know if you can hear it. Let me know if you can, if it's too loud. But I've noticed as I'm sitting on the patio and there's dozens, or at least a dozen or so trees that are dropped in my sight line. I live at the end of the mountain, the bottom of the mountain. There's a river at the base and a mountain across the river. And it's just a beautiful view. It was pretty before, but I had to peek around trees. Now I've got this full view of all the mountain and the view of the river. It's just beautiful. It's a very different experience. And I've likened the same experience of chopping down a few trees to the experience that we have if we assess our mindset around education and about learning. And that is why I was so drawn to Angela and Maren's book, Thinking About Learning Differently, because when we start to shift our perspective on what an education is anyway, then we actually have a very expansive experience of the home education lifestyle and our family life at home, and even how we experience our kids differently. I have two questions for you to get you really thinking about how this conversation might apply to you in your home education story. The first is, am I homeschooling with my child's unique needs and personality in mind? Not their learning styles, because I think learning styles have been debunked, but actually their needs and their personality. Or are you following or adhering to a method or your expectation around something that doesn't really fit who they really are? And then the other question is, how can I trust my intuition more, knowing that I am the best guide for my child's education? Just chew on those two questions and get your juices flowing before we have this conversation. You can also listen to the rest of our conversation over on my podcast, the Homeschool Mama Self-Care podcast. If we haven't met, my name is Teresa Wiedrich. I'm the certified life coach and graduated homeschool mom of 4 children, 2 of whom are right here. Welcome, girls. So I want to introduce you, though, to Angela Sizer, who is a very fascinating person who has had this experience of being trained and educating in the conventional system and also home educating her kids. And now she has a very rounded experience of what it's like to both homeschool after she's taught and also experience what school is like after she's homeschooled. So let's chat with Angela. So you just need to request to join. Hi, nice to see you. Uh,
Hi, Teresa.
can you hear the chainsaws in the background?
I did hear it a little bit. It wasn't too loud or anything, but I heard a little bit of it. So,
For today, because I've got all sorts of different live things going on
yeah, yeah, yeah.
today that it's such a small transition, like different way of thinking about things. You just chop one tree down, or you just chop out one tiny thought thread, and then everything shifts in how you show up
Mm,
in how you're homeschooling, but also how you're seeing your children
hmm.
as the first of all, I just want to say
Thank,
welcome.
thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah,
And
so good.
thanks for having me on your podcast this week too.
It,
It was a great follow-up conversation.
I don't know if you edit your own stuff, but I edit my own things purposefully. Well, I mean, it's a lot less expensive that way, but also I've done it purposely to build my communication skills. And I can hear those varying points where I wish I had not cut, or I wouldn't have interrupted and allowed you to continue.
We all do that. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all do that. I mean, yeah, because it's good to have like a back and forth conversation where you're both contributing things. And so, like, also sharing your story is good. So I think a little bit of interruption is just fine.
Think that you wish you said or had gone down further in our conversation?
Oh gosh, I can't even. No, I have no idea. I think it was a really great conversation. Um, we just had good talks because like we share a lot of philosophy, and then also just like we're kind of in a similar phase a little bit. My kids are teens, and I have one in college. I know yours are maybe a little bit older, but we've moved on from the little kid phase. And I know, like my kids are in public school right now. So, we had a lot to talk about.
We had a lot to talk about, and there actually that part, I'll leave it for the podcast interview for people to listen to, but that conversation about moving from homeschooling into high school, that's just talk about enough. So you'll have to that element, like an important part to listen to. But I know we're tight on time, and I'm going to be really strict on time.
Okay.
They'll watch and they'll be like, "Oh, it's so fun watching her try to watch time."
It's right at the top of your device. It's easy.
I'm engrossed with you.
I know. You're cutting. I just want you to know you're cutting out a little bit, which is fine. But if I sound like I'm like missing something, that's why.
Okay. Yeah, interestingly, the trees are being cut for that purpose.
Oh.
Tell them to get better Wi-Fi. Go figure. So in your book, okay, so you just released your audio version of your book. Was that a really different experience than the written?
Actually, it comes out October 17th. Oh. So, well, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks from now, which I am so excited about. We've been waiting for this. I feel like personally, I know more people who would like to listen than I read a book. And so like the people in my personal life have been waiting for the audiobook to come out. So have I. And yeah, it was really different. Have you ever recorded an audiobook?
No, I haven't. I just like kind of podcast episodes.
Yeah. So, I've podcasted for 8 years. And so I was like, what? I know what I'm doing. It's completely different. Like reading something aloud is totally different than having a conversation online. It just was, you got to read it perfectly with the right inflection. And like, listen, I wrote these words. I've read them over many times. So you'd think it would be like second nature, super easy. And it was pretty not easy, but it was enjoyable. It just was a lot different than a podcast.
Yeah, trying to find your breath when you're trying to intonate something that you've read, because for some podcast episodes, trying to find your breath or trying to ignore that you need breath.
I know. And now, of course, I'm listening to a different audiobook and I'm hearing this woman breathe, and I'm like, did I do that? Like I feel like I can hear every time she goes, and I think, oh, is that just normal? Or I don't know. I'll be really curious to hear when it comes out. I also got tripped up on a few, like just sometimes there'd be a sentence and I'm like, I can't say this. I've tried 5 times now and I get tripped up every time. It'll be like, one phrase was like, send your kid to traditional school. And like, for some reason, too traditional. Like I can say it now, but when I was recording it, I could not say it.
I feel you, because I often say cheerleader, a clarifier, and see, now I just messed it up.
Oh, okay.
Okay, forget it. I say it all the time, but alliteration.
Yeah.
And then you're perimenopausal, but that's a different discussion. So this experience of writing, I talked about this on the podcast with you too. And not coincidentally, my writer's room is this Friday. And I was talking about the benefits of writing in my Confident Homeschool Mom Collective. And I know that everyone isn't a writer. Mm-hmm. Not everyone themselves as a writer. They don't even want to necessarily write. But I find it builds your confidence. Like you get really clear. And just by the mere act of putting it out there in the world for people to look at and question, it actually strengthens your inner sense of person. So experience of that.
Yeah. I mean, it was very clarifying because, like I said, we've been podcasting. My partner Maren and I, we've been podcasting for so long, and we have all these ideas, and we are very aligned, kind of like you. We're aligned on our ideas. We have, we feel like very clear on what we're talking about, and then, but writing a book really forces you to get even clearer and to get even more specific and to broaden some things and weed out other things. It's interesting. I mean, the book is like 270 some pages. We cut out so much. And I feel like when we started, I was like, how are we going to get 270 pages? Like, there's just no way. And I mean, I felt like we could have easily doubled it, but we cut out literally so many things, so it was very refining, which I think was good because I also think like, because you have podcasts and books, like there's a different audience for, some people like to listen to podcasts, some people like to read books. And so I think it's good. It was good to get our stuff like written and like tangible. Because you can't like hand a podcast to somebody, unfortunately, and you're not going to listen to our entire back catalog of podcasts. Very few people are going to do that. So
every once in a while someone tell me they do that, and I'm like, I'll say that on my podcast episodes about myself. I've actually found that writing in different forms, whether it's podcast or blog or in courses, I write courses as well. All they are different. The way that I deliver it is it's different. But what I find is discussing things with you or various people in interviews helps me to expand how I think concept. If I do it in coaching and I'm coming at it from the perspective of the person that's challenged by whatever the thing is, like this one mom parent said, what do you tell yourself on the hard days? My 6-year-old is rather difficult today. Oh, girlfriend, there are those days. I literally have a post that on my podcast or on my website. And when you listen to it through like the challenges that people have through their words, or you're learning through other people like you in the same realm and contributing in the same realm, you're able to put more voice to it or put more definition to all the things you're speaking to.
Yeah. I mean, to answer this question, I first of all empathize, and secondly, like I find it helpful. And of course, like when you have a 6-year-old, all you know is that age and younger, but when you have more experience, you see that is just one day, 1 week, 1 year, or whatever. If it's a hard year, a hard week, whatever, that's really a small blip in the overall like experience of childhood or homeschooling or whatever it is. And things are going to be difficult, and you can take them as learning opportunities. You can, because life is difficult, life is difficult as adults, as children, right? So it's normal to have a difficult day in homeschool, just like it's normal to have a difficult day in school and life. And so you got to take those like, just like, yep, this is what happens. Let's just quit for today and do something else. Or let's just take a break for the week and do something else. Or let's pivot and like try and have some fun, and just know that this is a small blip in the overall childhood picture, whatever that your child will be getting.
So does it? Because it's different for me. And when I'm coaching other women, they're always like, I just want to know that I'm not alone. You really aren't. Like if you're challenged by literally anything, there are other people having your experiences right now.
Yeah, for sure.
That was part of the reason that I wanted to gather people in a collective, is to say, let's just get together. But when I'll quote you, because I put this on my show notes to the episode, you said the hardest part of homeschooling is actually you.
The parent, like all the things, like, even just take away homeschooling, but just parenting, like your child is reflecting back to you all of the things that you need to work on, and areas of opportunity for yourself. And so it's a real growth and learning opportunity if you choose to take it.
Amen.
If you choose to let your child teach you.
Yeah.
And if you choose to um, take what you've always thought, and not to be cheesy and say my book title, but think differently about how you are thinking and how you are approaching things. If you're open and willing to think, oh, there could be another way, or I don't quite know everything yet, or I'm really open to, like I said, my child teaching me. Yeah, I think that is the challenge. That's the work.
You just said, I say in different
Yeah,
words. That's
I know.
I wrote my book, was
Yeah.
for that, all the things that I learned through my homeschooling experience about myself. And because I didn't know anything about SEO and I didn't know anything about anything online, I thought homeschool mama self-care, that would encapsulate everything. I realized people always think that means like pedicures and manicures and
Yeah.
for that version of
Yeah. Yeah.
thought self-care, your mindset and your mental wellness around all the mother.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting that yeah, the whole term self-care is, I'm sure like contains a lot of things. That's one topic. Like, we wanted to have a whole chapter in the book about self-care, and we talk about it a lot on our podcast, and it just didn't fit in a chapter form, but we did try to weave it throughout as being like just a common theme of really taking care of yourself, and leaning into your own strengths,
Yeah.
and honoring who you are and your needs, just like we're honoring our kids and their needs and strengths and desires. Yeah. So
I was just literally saying today to someone else that when we ask the question, am I doing enough or is this enough? I think there's different ways we can look at that question. But sometimes when we're asking ourselves, are we doing enough? It means that, or sometimes it reflects to us that we are trying to do a home education that is adhering to a specific curriculum or method, or certain expectations that we've had. But it's not actually about the child in front of us.
Yeah.
Towards who is the actual child than ourselves. Because when people ask me about their child, is it enough? I can say, well, now I don't know your child.
Yeah. That's a good answer. That's a good answer, because and it's natural for us to look at outside expectations, requirements. What is the school system doing? What is my neighbor who homeschools doing? What is my kid's cousin who's in first grade doing? What are these podcasters doing? Whatever. It's natural, because, like I always say, like, when you start homeschooling, you don't know what you're doing. You're doing something countercultural. It's scary. It's really scary. So we tend to look at other people and look at for benchmarks. But you're right that that is not your child. That is not your child. And the people who decided those benchmarks, like, may not have even been experts in child development. They may just be following the crowd, or I don't know. And so it's really important, like you said, to look at your child and what your child needs. And, like, I made this mistake so much. Like, I when my 6-year-old was 6, all she wanted to do was play, and I, like, made her do school. I interrupted play for her to do school, and I just, like, I look back and I have a lot of compassion for young me, who didn't really know. And I changed with subsequent kids, and I learned and stuff. But yeah, like, I wish I would have listened to her, who she was telling me play was the most important thing. And
Yeah.
then now I look back and I'm like, 6, that's so young. Of course she wanted to play. That's the way she learns best.
And I'm like any words from us at all for your 6-year-old, just know this, that we thought that way as well. And now in hindsight, we can see that it was not necessary to go deep down into all the academics and things at the time.
Yeah.
But, speak to the imposter syndrome that you just spoke to, because we talked about this.
Yeah.
I often hear people that are earlier in the journey talk about feeling like, well, but I'm not like a trained teacher.
Yeah.
And I feel that imposter syndrome energy. And I like that perspective, and I think, you know what, it's normal for you to be an imposter in any role that, and so you don't know what you need to know about the thing. I mean, I trained in nursing, Bachelor of Science in nursing, and then I went onto the unit and I just went, what am I supposed to do? Because they give me all the details of here's where you show up at 7 and I start at this time, and nobody said that stuff to me.
And you're like, I'm the expert here. I'm in charge.
Months to feel like, okay, so someone's asking me a question, I need to be able to give them a clear answer. And so that's like normal. I still had meaning in it, and I still was not certain. And to be truthful, I mean, I'm like 25 years past now, I having in that world, but my husband's in that world, so I feel like I've not really left it. I'm sure I could go back into it, only because, and not that I'm going to, but I think I could, because I feel confident that I could. So
you have confidence now that you didn't then, where you're like, I know I could learn. I know I could ask questions. I know I could figure it out. Yeah. I think, like, especially with homeschooling, teaching, whatever you're doing, nobody knows what they're doing, and also you know what you're doing. Like, you are your child's parent, you know them the best, they know you the best, you have this connected relationship, and so you will figure it out. You will figure it out if you listen to your intuition, both you and your child. You will figure it out. I know that sounds kind of woo woo. It sounds kind of like pie in the sky. And I understand you got to start somewhere. And so you might pull out a curriculum or get a workbook or whatever. And then you just kind of keep learning as you're going. Like, oh, that didn't really work. Okay, we're going to try something else. Or I'm realizing my kid really needs that rest time, so we're going to do that. Or I'm really realizing my kid really thrives in this kind of environment. Okay, we're going to add some of that in. I think I think we all do that. Like,
we all do that in every area.
In every area. Yeah. Okay, should we answer this question? I see another question here. Should we answer that one? Is it okay to do a certain grade level twice, like kindergarten, instead of jumping into first grade, if you feel your child did not learn in the public school? I think it's okay to do whatever you want. I think it's okay. I wouldn't even call it a grade. I wouldn't even call it kindergarten. I wouldn't even call it first grade. I would just do what you think your child needs in that time. If your child needs more reading aloud, do more reading aloud. If your child, because your child probably is really good at something, like they're probably like really into some things, follow that. Yeah. Follow what your child is really into and do that. But yes, you can do it. That's the beauty of homeschool. You can do whatever you want. And I wouldn't say like, we're doing kindergarten twice. I wouldn't necessarily say that or voice that. I would just think like, there's a few things about kindergarten that were really helpful for my child, and I want to keep doing them.
Right. Yeah. Or there's certain introduce them. I personally don't think in grades. I only thought in grades when I was in public, and to like my children were going to get asked in the grocery store, "What grade are you in?" And then, what grade am I in? So I'm with the grade before we went in. Yeah. But if we're not trying to do something within the conventional education system, like follow the path of the conventional system, then I would just ask, what's the relevance of the grade in the first place? Yeah, are required to follow grades. Well, that's a different discussion. I think we could do like an entire masterclass just on, should we call it a grade, or what about grades or something?
Yeah, grade levels. Yeah.
It would blow the minds of many people that are not accustomed to talking like this. And at the same time, like, really, what is the grade? Is it required to do certain things at certain times? Because not every child is able to do certain things at certain times.
Yeah.
So it was such a pleasure to have a chat with you.
Oh, it was a pleasure to talk to you again.
Yeah. Anytime that you want to chit chat about things, I'd love to. And anybody else want every 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Tuesdays for the Homeschool Mom Chat, I'm here, happy to answer questions and have a conversation with you. And good luck on your audiobook. I'm really excited.
Thank you. Here's our book. I just want
to
think differently about learning. It's out now, but the audiobook comes out soon. It's October 17th. So
confetti, cue the confetti.
Yeah, cue the confetti. Thanks,
Yeah.
Teresa.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Mwah.
Bye.